Hello everyone and welcome to the penultimate round of this year's Superbet Chess Classic. We have a very exciting game between young Krzysztof Duda and Alireza Firouzja. Alireza, who already defeated 3 people in this classical tournament, and out of those 3, okay, he defeated Bogdan Daniel Deagra, but he also defeated the reigning world champion Ding Liren and the former World Chess Championship challenger Jan Nepomniachtchi, and Duda is still without a win in this tournament. He has 1 loss, he drew all of his other games, so he would very much enjoy a win, at least with the white pieces in the penultimate round, as there's only 1 more round after this one. So that being said, let's check it out. Quite a lot to enjoy here. So Duda has the white pieces and he opens with the d4. We have d5, pawn to c4, pawn to c6, and knight to c3. Knight to c3 going after the Slav defense with a pretty standard setup. We have knight to f6, c captures on d5, c captures, and bishop to f4. So the exchange variation being played, followed up with bishop to f4, knight to c6, and now pawn to e3. We have bishop to f5, all fairly standard stuff, knight to f3, and now pawn to e6. And here, usually you will see bishop to d3. This is the most common move. Bishop to b5 is the second most popular, but instead we have queen to b3. It's a very tricky attempt by white, okay, going after the b7 pawn, so you have to defend against that. We have bishop to b4, stopping that, and also pinning the knight on c3, and now bishop to b5. And this is very tricky position. There are even classical games in the database that reach this position where black thought, okay, I'm just gonna play queen to b6 and everything is nicely defended, because if you capture, my bishop on b4 is defended, but they overlook that queen captures on b4 is possible because the knight on c6 is pinned. And yes, I'm talking about a classical game. The highest rated player to do this in a classical game was rated over 2300. So he made this queen to b6 move against the 2500 player. So it's just something that, you know, people do for some reason. There just are these positions in chess. I don't know. We should have a name for that. Like, it's a position where it doesn't matter how high the player is rated, he will make a silly move. So here we have castles, which is a great move, and now just bishop captures, bishop captures on c3, queen captures on c3, and now you could play something like rook to c8, but first we have knight e4 attacking the queen, queen to a3, and now b captures on c6. We have rook to c1 going after the pawn, and now you might expect something like rook to c8, but no, Alireza wants a game. He plays pawn to g5, and he goes after the white king. Now the bishop is attacked, you have to move it, bishop to g3, and okay, there is one game where queen to b6 was played. It was played in a game between Patrick van Hoeland and Game Kafka in 2016 in Novi Sad, but here we have rook to c8, and it is now as of move 14 that we have a completely new game. So knight to d2, trying to get rid of this annoying knight on e4, because for the moment it is the strongest piece on the board. Knight captures on g3, h captures, and just king to g7. So you can push h5, you can put the rook on h8, and so on, as white does have the semi-open h file. We have rook to c5, now either preparing to move the king, maybe double up on the c file, put pressure on the c pawn, or just shifting the rook to the a file and going after the a7 pawn. And there doesn't seem to be all that much Alireza can do about this. So he goes rook to h8, we have rook to a5 going after the a7 pawn, and now just rook to c7, preparing to trade rooks here if Duda trades. And then Alireza wants to shift the attention to the king side, even though he's down a pawn. And Duda says, alright, I don't really have a say in this. Rook captures on a7, we have rook captures, queen captures, and now pawn to h5. Alireza goes for the attack, and the difference on the clock is Duda has an hour on the clock, Alireza has half an hour on the clock. And here we have pawn to b3. Which everyone thought was not the most precise idea, because the engine was sort of saying you have to play knight to f3 here, because then you get the knight to e5. But also the engine shows that with you know, decent defense, it doesn't really do all that much. Let's say g4, knight to e5, bishop to g6, and now okay, a human will leave the knight here and probably put so much pressure on black that at some point black will just crack under pressure. But the engine says, yeah, just knight captures on g6 here will be nice for white. But a human, no way that a human gives up this knight for a bishop. You know, it's something maybe Fischer would do and get a brilliancy prize for it, but I don't know, you just don't see anyone doing this. So this does seem like it could be the way to go, but instead we have b3. Now he wants to start advancing that past pawn to victory, and now we have pawn to h4. Again, Alireza could play pawn to g4, but it seems Alireza doesn't care about knight to f3, so he just plays pawn to h4, and now, okay, we have captures on h4, g captures on h4, and now knight to f3. Now Duda will get his knight to e5, bishop to g6, and now even rook to h3 first. We have queen to a8 offering a queen trade, and the Duda happily trades. We have captures, captures, and now as the a2 pawn is hanging, pawn to a4. We have bishop to c2 now, going after the b3 pawn, and we have a trade. Rook captures on h4, bishop captures on b3, and rook to g4 check. We have king to f8, and now rook to f4, going for some knight to e5, but also knight to g5 ideas. This will put pressure on the f7 pawn, but also on the e6 pawn as the f pawn is pinned. And now, basically, you have to decide where to put your king, whether to put it on g7 or to put it on e7. E7 is much better, but Alireza does none of it. He plays rook to a7, and one of the reasons why probably Alireza decided for this is that he was very low on time. So here, pawn to a5, sorry, pawn to a5. Now, again, if you move the rook here, let's say rook captures, then the knight comes to g5, and there's the threat of rook captures here, and also the threat of knight captures on e6, so you don't have a rook back to a7. So instead, after this a5 move, we have bishop to a4. Now the situation is 13 minutes on the clock for Duda and only 6 minutes on the clock for Alireza, and we have pawn to a6. Another tricky move. The point is, if you go for something like knight to e5 here, putting pressure on the pawn here, then king to g7 can be played. And now if pawn to a6, then for example pawn to f5, and it's hard to say. Probably white will be able to play something like g4, and then let's say king to f6, captures here, captures here. White will have the advantage of a better pawn structure, being a pawn up, and you should be able to do something about it. Let's say rook to h4, and then you push for advantage. But instead, Duda went for the immediate pawn to a6, and now we have bishop to b5. Interestingly, Alireza made this move with 4 seconds on the clock. He's playing this just an increment, and okay, you can play this, but it seems that c5 was probably the way to go here. Point is that after d captures on c5 and rook captures on a6, knight to e5 comes going after the pawn. You can play this bishop to e8 move. That's why c5 was so strong, as it clears the path for the bishop to retreat the e8 square. But of course, he was very low on time. Bishop to b5 was played, and now knight to g5 is just incredibly strong. You cannot defend against knight captures on e6. So here, bishop captures on a6 was played, knight captures on e6 with check, king to e7, and now knight back to g5, putting pressure on the f7 pawn. King to f8 still fights, somewhat fights here, but after pawn to f6, now Duda is completely winning if he's precise. Knight to h7, now the pawn will fall. f5, rook captures on f5, and bishop to d3. Nicely connecting here, but there's rook to e5, of course. This comes with check, king to d6, and now knight to g5. And here, Duda is up 2 pawns, and of course, once that g pawn starts marching up the board, you cannot save the game anymore. If the bishop here was defended, then you could harass the white king with rook a1 check, rook a2 check, rook a1 check, and then you would either win the f2 pawn or get a perpetual. Unfortunately, the bishop on d3 is not defended, so rook to a1 check, king d2 just comes with an attack on the bishop. So instead, rook to a2 was played, going for rook to e2 check, but now knight to h3. Knight to f7 check is perhaps a bit more precise, but knight to h3 also is very nice. Now you don't have to worry about the f2 pawn, and now we have a bishop to c4, and now this is move 39, and Alireza has to be very, very careful here because Duda played pawn to g4, and now Alireza has a chance. He can actually get this position maybe to a draw, but he has to again find pawn to c5. But he has one more move to make the reach time control, and he actually played it with 2 seconds on the clock, but he did not go for c5. He played rook to e2 with check. Just to show you why c5 is so strong, now of course the pawn cannot capture, the rook would hang here, so we would move the rook to a1 with check, and after a few checks here, let's see, king to d2, rook to a2 with check, king to c1, king to c6, you will play rook to f8, and now c captures on d4, e captures, and rook to a1 with check. You will play king to b2, rook a2 check, you will play king to b1, so no more checks, rook to d2 going after the pawn here, and this is now sufficient. Knight will come to f4, you will pick up the d4 pawn, and you're now down only one pawn, and you have, well, more than excellent drawing chances. However, Alireza played rook to e2 with check. Now, of course, you don't go to f1 under the mask of the bishop. So king to d1 was played, and now rook to a2. We have pawn to g5. Duda just starts advancing his passed pawn. Pawn to c5 now. Alireza finds the move that he should have played a few moves ago, but now it is too late. We have pawn to g6, bishop to b3 with check. We have king to e1 and rook to a1 with check. King e2, we have rook to a2 with check. King to f3, and now pawn to c4. Alireza also creates a passed pawn, but now rook to e8, not allowing the rook to stop the promotion of the g-pawn. So here, rook to a7, stopping rook to g7, but now Duda just ends the game in a single move. I'm sure you guys can see it because the pawn covers c5 and d5. Duda just plays rook to d8 with check, and it was in this position on a move 48 that Alireza Firouzja resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. The problem is, as we've said, you have to go up the board. You can't go here, well, if you go to e7 or c7, doesn't really matter, just g7, and then the pawn is defended. If you go for something like king to e6, then we just slowly bring the king up the board. Of course, there's no point in playing this, and if you go away from the pawn, then that's obviously even worse. So Alireza had enough of this. It's too ugly a position to play, so he just resigned here. And interestingly, this is Duda's first win in the tournament, and even though it kind of ruins Alireza's chances of winning the tournament, Alireza is still doing excellently on the standings. These are the standings after 8 rounds of this incredible tournament. So Fabi is leading with 5 points, and then in second place we have Alireza, Firouzja, Wesley Soanish Giri, and Richard Rapport tied with 4.5 points. Then with 4 points, Maxim Vashiolagram and Yang Krzysztof Duda. With 3 points, Jan Nepomniachtchi and Ding Liren, and Bogdan Daniel Deak, so sharing basically last place. So we'll see what happens in the final round. Will Fabi take it, or will some of the other gentlemen, Alireza, Wesley, Anish, Richard, have something to say about this? And maybe take the tournament for themselves. But as Fabi is in sole lead, that means that if Fabi wins, he's definitely the winner. And I can't remember which tournament it was. I think it was maybe 2018 or something. Fabi was leading a tournament by half a point in the final round, and then he just won. So you know, maybe that will happen. We'll see how it goes, as he is playing incredible chess. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Mazin Elsarag. Thank you for videos. Dr. Heisenberg, Dingfan, and Ravishing Reptiles YouTube for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of this incredible event until it finishes. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.